The stars of the galaxy shone cold and distant, a silent canvas where countless civilizations lived, fought, and struggled. Among them was the Therial Confederacy, a peaceful people who had never known true war until now. Their ships were elegant, designed for exploration and trade, not battle. Their colonies spread across several star systems, glowing with life and beauty. But that beauty was fading. The enemy came without warning, the Korvac Raiders. They were a warlike species who thrived on conquest and plunder. For generations they had preyed upon weaker civilizations, taking resources, enslaving populations, and leaving only ashes behind. And now their eyes had fallen on the Therial. The Therial Council gathered in their shining capital city on the homeworld of Silurian. Holographic projections filled the chamber, showing burning colonies, destroyed fleets, and endless streams of refugees. The counselors spoke in desperate tones, their voices trembling. "We cannot hold them back," whispered Counselor Vera, her silver eyes dim with fear. "Our fleets are shattered. The Korvac show no mercy. They will take Silurian within the month. We must surrender," cried another. "Perhaps they will let us live if we bow." But the High Chancellor, Terran Velor, shook his head. His hands gripped the edges of the council table, his voice steady but heavy with despair. "Surrender means slavery. The Korvac do not make peace. They consume. If we yield, our children will grow up in chains." A silence fell over the chamber. Everyone knew his words were true. The Korvac were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were predators. At last, Chancellor Terran raised his voice. "There is one path left to us. We will send an SOS across the stars. We will beg for help." The chamber erupted with protests. Who would come? No empire cares for us. They will not risk their fleets for a weak people. But the Chancellor only closed his eyes. "Perhaps. But if even one hears us, if even one answers, then we may survive." And so the decision was made. The message, the Therial's greatest transmitters, lit up with power. Across subspace, across the silent gulfs of the void, their message went forth. "This is the Therial Confederacy. We are under attack by the Korvac Raiders. We cannot hold them back. Our worlds burn, our people die. Please, if you hear this, help us. We beg you, do not let us fall." The signal raced outward, hopping across the stars, passing through neutral space, across the borders of rival empires, across the cold abyss. The Therial waited. Days passed, then weeks. Refugee ships continued to arrive at Silurian, carrying the broken and the wounded. The Therial defense fleet dwindled with every battle. Hope grew thin, and the galaxy's great powers remained silent. The Dren Collective, powerful and rich, dismissed the message. Too far. Not our concern. The Eldari Alliance, wise and ancient, shook their heads. Intervening would only cost us lives. Better to let the Therial fade. Even the smaller empires looked away. The Therial offered no resources, no power. Why waste fleets for them? The Therial Council wept. "We are alone," Counselor Vera whispered. "No one will come." But far away, on a blue and green world orbiting a yellow sun, the message was heard. Humanity listens on Earth. Deep beneath the surface of the United Nations Space Command headquarters, alarms sounded. The SOS had been captured, translated, and decoded. Generals, admirals, and diplomats gathered in silence as the Therial's desperate plea was replayed. The room was heavy with tension. Some of the leaders frowned. Others sat back in silence. At last, Admiral Rebecca Hale leaned forward. Her voice was calm, but it carried steel. "They are asking for help. Do we ignore them?" A diplomat hesitated. "Admiral, the Therial are far beyond our borders. Their plight does not affect us. If we intervene, we risk war with the Korvac. Why should we pay that price?" "Because they asked," Hale replied simply. "And because we can." Her words cut through the chamber like a blade. Humanity had not been in the stars for long compared to the elder races. But their reputation had already spread. They were Deathworlders born on a planet of storms, predators, earthquakes, and constant danger. They were resilient. They were stubborn. They were feared. Now faced with a call for help, humanity stood at a crossroad. The President of Earth, Elena Torres, rose to her feet. She looked around the chamber, her eyes hard. The Therial sent out a cry. The rest of the galaxy turned its back. But we will not. We know what it means to face extinction. We know what it means to fight against impossible odds. And we know this. If we ignore them, we betray everything humanity claims to stand for. She paused, then spoke the words that would change the course of history. Send the fleet. The ethereal weight back on Silurian. Despair hung over the people. The skies were filled with smoke from orbital bombardments. Refugees crowded the cities. Food supplies grew thin and whispers spread of the Korvac's final assault. Chancellor Terran stood on the balcony of the council hall watching the skies. His heart ached. He had sent the SOS with hope, but now that hope seemed foolish. Perhaps they were right, he whispered to himself. Perhaps no one cares. And then, something changed. The first signs on the edge of the ethereal system, far beyond their broken defense lines. The long-range scanners detected something. Massive energy signatures, a fleet emerging from FTL. At first, the ethereal feared it was the Korvac reinforcements. But then the readings came clearer. Dozens of warships, sleek and angular, unlike anything the ethereal had seen before. Their hulls shone with strange alloys, bristling with weapons. Their drives burned with raw power. A single message came through. This is the United Nations Space Command. We received your distress call. Stand firm, ethereal. You are not alone. The council chamber erupted with disbelief. Citizens wept in the streets. After weeks of silence, someone had answered. And not with a token ship, not with empty words, with a fleet. Chancellor Terran stared at the transmission, his eyes wide. His voice trembled as he spoke. By the stars, they came. The Korvac reaction far across the system, the Korvac fleets prepared for their final strike. When word reached them that a foreign fleet had entered the system, their warlords laughed. Fools, snarled Warlord Korvac Dresh. Do they think they can stand against us? Another prey species comes to die. We will crush them as we crushed the ethereal. But the laughter carried unease. The Korvac had heard whispers of humanity. Tales of a Deathworld species. Tales of unpredictability, of ferocity unmatched. Some dismissed them as myths. Others wondered if the stories were true. They would soon find out. The stage is set on Silurian. The ethereal watched as the human fleet advanced into the system, shields flaring, weapons charged. The Korvac gathered their forces, eager for blood. Two destinies were about to collide. The helpless cry of the ethereal had been heard, and humanity had answered not with hesitation, but with overwhelming strength. For the first time in weeks, hope returned to the ethereal. The message had not been ignored. The Deathworlders had come. The blackness of space over Silurian was heavy with tension. On one side, the broken fleets of the ethereal drifted in orbit, battered and weary. On the other side, the endless tide of Korvac warships gathered like predators circling wounded prey. Between them, a new force entered the system, the human fleet. No one in the ethereal confederacy had expected so many ships. Their sensors struggled to count them all. The formation stretched across the void, a wall of steel and fire. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, every hull gleamed with hard utilitarian lines. These were not ships made for beauty, but for war. The first transmission echoed across the system. This is Admiral Rebecca Hale of the United Nations Space Command. We heard your call. Stand firm, ethereal. You are not alone. The words spread like lightning. Across Silurian cities, desperate citizens gathered in public squares to watch the transmissions. Tears of relief filled their eyes. They had begged for help, and against all expectations, someone had come. Not just someone, Deathworlders. The ethereal's first glimpse. In the ethereal council chamber, Chancellor Terran and the other leaders leaned forward as the image of Admiral Hale appeared. She was human, her hair dark, her eyes sharp, her uniform crisp. She looked calm, unshaken by the danger surrounding them. You truly came, Terran whispered, almost unable to believe it. Yes, Hale answered. Her voice carried strength and certainty. We came because you asked. That is reason enough. The council members exchanged glances. No empire in the galaxy had ever spoken such words. The powerful acted only when it benefited them. Yet here was humanity, sending a fleet across the stars for strangers. Why? Asked Counselor Vera. Why risk your lives for us? Admiral Hale gave a small smile, though her eyes remained hard. Because we know what it feels like to face extinction, and because one day it might be us calling for help. We would hope someone answers. The chamber fell silent. For the first time in weeks, Hope flickered in the hearts of the Therial, the Korovak mockery, but hope was not shared on the other side of the system. On the bridge of the Korovak flagship, Warlord Dresh sneered as reports came in. He was massive, armored in black scales, his eyes burning with hunger for battle. Around him, his lieutenants barked laughter. "So the humans come," Dresh growled. "The prey believes they can be heroes." One of his captains leaned forward. "Shall we crush them now, Warlord?" "Yes," Dresh snarled, but slowly. "I want their screams carried across the stars. Let all know what happens to those who stand against the Korovak." The raider fleets began to move, their jagged ships glowing with weapons. They believed they faced another weak species. They did not yet understand what humanity was. The first Clash Admiral Hale stood on the command deck of her flagship, the UNS Dauntless. Around her, officers moved quickly, their voices sharp with efficiency. "Enemy fleet closing fast," reported the sensor officer. "Over 200 ships detected." "Good," Hale said calmly. "Prepare formation Delta 7. Deploy drones. Bring rail batteries online." Her fleet moved like a living creature, every ship sliding into place. Human warships did not glide with elegance like Therial vessels. They bristled with weapons, armor layered thick, engines roaring with raw power. The Korovak opened fire first. Brilliant beams of plasma streaked across the void, slamming into human shields. Explosions rippled across the blackness. The Therial, watching from their command centers, gasped in fear, but then the human fleet answered. Missiles erupted from silos, streaking through the dark like falling stars. Railguns fired slugs at near-relativistic speeds, tearing through Korovak armor. Swarms of combat drones poured from carriers, darting like angry insects, harassing enemy flanks. The Therial counselors leaned forward, stunned. Humanity fought differently from anything they had ever seen. There was no graceful dance, no slow maneuvers. It was controlled chaos, unpredictable, aggressive, overwhelming. The Therials awe in the council chamber. Chancellor Terran gripped the table, his heart pounding. "They fight like storms," he whispered. Counselor Vera nodded, her voice trembling. "No wonder they are called Deathworlders. Every strike is wild, yet every strike lands. They fight as if chaos itself obeys them." On the screens, Korovak ships began to break apart, their formations crumbling under the relentless assault. The Therial people, watching from their homes, erupted into cheers. For the first time in months, the Korovak were retreating. The human soldiers, while the fleets clashed in orbit, smaller human vessels made daring moves. Dropships cut through the chaos, slipping past Korovak lines to reach besieged Therial colonies. Human marines stormed the surface, their armor heavy, their weapons brutal. The Therial survivors who saw them could hardly believe their eyes. Humans charged through fire and destruction, pulling civilians to safety, holding the line against raiders with unbreakable determination. "They are fearless," whispered one Therial elder as she was carried to safety. "They fight like they were born for this," and in truth they were. The Korovak shock on the flagship of Warlord Dresh fury burned. His fleets were supposed to crush these newcomers easily. Instead, his ships were falling apart, and his warriors whispered in fear. "Impossible," he snarled, slamming his claws against the command chair. "They are nothing but animals from a death world." But even as he shouted, he saw the truth. The humans were not simply strong. They were clever. They adapted instantly to every counterattack. Where the Korovak expected fear, they found resolve. Where they expected hesitation, they found ferocity. And worst of all, they fought not only with strength but with purpose. They fought to protect. Dresh felt a chill crawl up his spine. For the first time, the Korovak were unsure. The aftermath of battle. After hours of fierce combat, the first great clash ended. The Korovak, bloodied and broken, retreated into the dark. Dozens of their ships lay shattered. Human casualties existed, but their fleet still stood strong, their banners unbroken. On Silurian, the streets filled with celebration. Citizens cried, embracing one another. For the first time since the war began, they had seen the enemy flee. In the council chamber, Chancellor Terran looked again at Admiral Hale's image. His voice was hoarse with emotion. "You came not as conquerors, but as saviors. We owe you more than words can give." Hale shook her head. "You owe us nothing. Stand with us, and together we will push the Korovak back." Terran bowed his head. For the first time, he believed survival was possible. The galaxy watches beyond the Therial system, across the galaxy, whispers spread. News of the battle traveled fast. Other empires who had ignored the Therial's cry now watched in disbelief. The humans sent an entire fleet? One elder diplomat asked. They fought the Korvac head-on and won? Another muttered. This is dangerous, a third whispered. If they fight like this for strangers, what will they do for themselves? Fear mingled with awe. Humanity's reputation as Deathworlders was no longer rumor. It was fact burned into the memory of every watching eye. A new alliance that night. As Silurian cities glowed with light for the first time in weeks, the Therial leaders met once more. We have been given a chance, Counselor Vera said softly. The Deathworlders did not ignore us. They fight for us as if we were their own. Chancellor Terran nodded. His voice was firm now. Then we will not be weak. We will stand with them. The Therial Confederacy will fight beside humanity. And so a new alliance was born. One forged not from power but from compassion. The Therial had cried out into the void. The galaxy had turned its back. But the humans had answered not with small aid, not with token words, but with shock and awe. The Korvac had been driven back from Silurian, their ships shattered, their pride wounded. For the Therial, it was the first victory they had ever seen. For humanity, it was only the beginning. Admiral Rebecca Hale stood on the command deck of the UNS Dauntless, watching the tactical displays shift from flashing red to calm blue. Her officers reported damage and losses, but the fleet still stood strong. The humans had not only survived, they had won. Enemy ships are retreating into deep space, her operations officer confirmed. They're regrouping outside the system. Hale nodded. She knew what was coming next. The Korvac would not accept defeat. They would return with more ships, more fury, more hatred. And when they did, the humans had to be ready. The Therial's first lesson, on the surface of Silurian, Chancellor Terran and the Therial Council were still struggling to understand what had happened. They had expected humanity to fight, yes, but not like this. Counselor Vera watched the battle replays in stunned silence. Look at them, she whispered. Every time the enemy shifted formation, the humans shifted faster. Every trap the Korvac set, the humans broke. They fight like no one else, Terran nodded slowly. They are not bound by the old doctrines, they are unpredictable. Moments later, a transmission from Admiral Hale filled the chamber. Her calm face appeared once more. We held the line today, she said, but this was only the first wave. The Korvac will come again, stronger. You must prepare with us. We will show you how to fight not only with ships but with strategy. The Therial exchanged nervous glances. They were traders, explorers, thinkers, not warriors. And yet as they looked into the human admiral's steady eyes, they realized they had no choice. Teach us, Chancellor Terran said firmly. We will learn. The human way of war, the following days were unlike anything the Therial had known. On the great training fields of Silurian, human marines drilled Therial recruits. Commands echoed, weapons fired, and for the first time, Therial learned to hold rifles, to take cover, to fight as squads. Their delicate fingers trembled, but the humans were patient. Stand firm, barked Sergeant Cole, a tall human with a voice like thunder. The enemy won't wait for you to be ready. Move like your life depends on it, because it does. At first, the Therial stumbled. They lacked the instinct, the raw aggression that came naturally to humans. But slowly, under relentless instruction, they began to improve. Their fear turned into discipline. Their weakness became focus. In orbit, the same transformation began. Human tacticians worked side by side with Therial fleet commanders. They shared battle doctrines, formation maneuvers, and electronic warfare techniques. Your ships are elegant, said Commander Liu, pointing at the Therial holographic displays, but they are too fragile. Use them for support, not for the front line. Hide them behind our destroyers. Strike from angles the Korvac won't expect. The Therial officers listened, amazed. Never before had another species offered them so much knowledge, without asking for tribute in return. The humans taught not for profit, but because survival demanded it. The Korvac Council far from Silurian. The Korvac raiders gathered in a massive war council. Warlord Dresh sat at the head, his claws tapping angrily on the metal table. Around him, captains snarled and argued. These humans are not prey, one growled. They fight like predators. Then we crush them harder. Another spat. They are new to the stars. Their strength is a trick, nothing more. But the fear in their voices was clear. The Korvac had faced many enemies, but none had ever struck them so deeply in the first battle. The humans had broken their rhythm, their pride. Warlord Dresh rose, his eyes blazing. I do not care what they are. They will bleed like all the rest. We will gather the full strength of the war clans. We will drown them in fire. The council roared in agreement, though unease lingered. The humans were different. The Korvac knew it, even if they refused to admit it. Strategy in the shadows back on Silurian, Admiral Hale called her captains and Therial leaders into a war council. Holograms of the star systems lit the chamber. The Korvac are not finished, she began. They will return with a larger force. If we wait for them here, they will overwhelm us. We must take the fight to them. The Therial leaders gasped. You would go into their territory? Chancellor Terran asked. Yes, Hale said simply. If we strike first, we control the field. We choose the terms of battle. She outlined her plan. Human fleets would launch raids against Korvac supply lines, crippling their logistics. Therial ships, faster and more agile, would carry scouts and strike craft to harass flanks. Together they would bleed the raiders before the main assault even began. The Therial were nervous. They had never fought like this before. But as they studied the human strategy, they began to see its brilliance. It was dangerous, yes, but it gave them a chance. The first raid soon, the war shifted. Human destroyers, escorted by Therial scouts, slipped into Korvac space. They struck quickly, hitting fuel depots, smashing shipyards, disrupting communication hubs. Explosions lit the void as the raiders scrambled in confusion. Every time the Korvac tried to trap them, the humans adapted. They used decoys, false transmissions, sudden maneuvers that no other fleet would dare attempt. They don't fight by rules. One Korvac captain snarled after another failed ambush. They fight like lightning, unpredictable, unstoppable. The raids did more than weaken the Korvac. They gave the Therial hope. For the first time, they were not only defending but striking back. Their people began to believe survival was possible. The enemy strikes back, but the Korvac were not idle. Warlord Dresh gathered his forces, pulling ships from distant raids, calling every war clan to arms. His fleet swelled to terrifying size. They cannot run forever, Dresh growled. We will trap them near Silurian. We will burn their fleet to ash, and so the trap was set. The Korvac launched false transmissions, luring human scouts toward a system filled with hidden ships. But humanity was not so easily fooled. Unpredictable moves. Admiral Hale studied the transmissions carefully. Something about them was too neat, too perfect. She trusted her instincts, the instincts of a Deathworlder. It's a trap, she said. But traps work both ways. Instead of walking into the ambush, she turned it against the Korvac. Her fleet pretended to fall for the bait, then suddenly reversed course, hitting the enemy from the side. The result was chaos. Korvac ships collided with each other, their formation collapsing as human missiles rained down. The Therial, watching in awe, joined the strike, their sleek ships darting through the confusion to disable enemy weapons. When the battle ended, dozens of Korvac vessels were destroyed. Humanity had not only avoided the trap, they had sprung it on their enemies. The Therial's transformation, each battle changed the Therial. Once they had been a people of peace, unwilling to fight. Now under humanity's guidance they stood taller, their soldiers trained with discipline. Their fleets fought with cunning. Their voices no longer trembled when they spoke of war. Chancellor Terran addressed his people with pride. We were prey, but now we stand with hunters. We will not fall. And the people cheered, their voices rising across the cities. Fear across the stars. News of humanity's victories spread quickly. Other empires who had ignored the Therial's SOS watched with growing unease. They fight like no one else, murmured an Eldari ambassador. They are Deathworlders, replied another. We should have known they would not ignore the call. The galaxy whispered with both admiration and fear. Humanity was no longer just another new species. They were a storm, rising in the void. The calm. Before the storm on the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Hale studied the star charts. Her fleet had won many battles, but she knew the war was far from over. The Korvac are gathering their full strength, she told her officers. The next battle will decide everything. Her crew nodded. They had seen the enemy's rage. They knew what was coming, but their eyes shone with determination. On Silurian, the Therial prepared as well. Soldiers drilled, fleets resupplied, cities fortified. They were no longer helpless. With humanity beside them, they would face whatever came. In the dark reaches of space, Warlord Dresh's massive armada assembled, blotting out the stars. He swore vengeance, his voice echoing across the war clans, and so the stage was set. Two forces, two destinies racing toward a clash that would shake the galaxy. The Therial had called for help. Humanity had answered with shock and strategy. And soon, the true test would come. For weeks, reports spread of humanity's daring strikes and the Therial's rising courage. The Korvac had been bloodied, their pride shattered by ambushes turned against them and raids that destroyed their supply lines. But now the enemy gathered their full strength. An armada unlike anything the Therial had ever imagined was moving straight toward their homeworld. Admiral Rebecca Hale knew this battle would decide everything. Humanity had answered the SOS with fleets and firepower, but if they lost here, the Korvac would crush both humans and Therial in one stroke. Standing on the command deck of the UNS Dauntless, Hale studied the tactical map. Red markers filled the display, representing Korvac warships gathering like a storm. Her officers waited silently, watching her expression. "They're coming," she said at last, "and they'll throw everything they have at us. This isn't just a raid, it's an extermination strike." Her crew nodded grimly. They had known from the beginning that the Korvac would not let their pride remain broken. Preparing the defenses on Silurian, the Therial Confederacy transformed under human guidance. Once they had been traders and explorers, unprepared for war. Now their cities were fortified, their skies lined with shield arrays, their people trained to resist. Human engineers worked alongside Therial technicians, reinforcing planetary defenses and installing new weapons. Railgun platforms were set into orbit, while drone swarms waited in hidden bays. Sergeant Cole stood on the training grounds, watching lines of Therial soldiers march with rifles in hand. Their steps were still awkward, but their eyes burned with determination. "You're ready," he told them. "You've learned discipline. You've learned courage. That's more than half the battle." For the Therial, these words carried hope. They were no longer victims waiting to be saved. They were allies standing beside humanity. The enemy's arrival. The first signs of the Korvac fleet appeared on the long-range scanners. Thousands of ships, more than either humans or Therial had faced before, emerging from faster-than-light travel in massive waves. In the council chamber, Chancellor Terran felt his heart sink as he saw the sheer scale of the armada. The stars themselves seemed to vanish behind the endless swarm of warships. "They brought everything," whispered Counselor Vera. "Yes," Terran said quietly. "They mean to end us here." But Admiral Hale's message cut through the fear. "Do not lose heart. They believe numbers will save them, but numbers mean nothing against strategy. We will not let them break you." The Therial listened, their spirits lifting once again. The battle begins as the enemy armada advanced. The human fleet moved into formation. Massive battleships lined the front, their railguns glowing. Cruisers and destroyers spread wide, ready to flank. Behind them, carriers released swarms of drones, each armed with small but deadly payloads. "Target their forward shields," Hale ordered, "and prepare the Therial for Phase 2. When the Korvac opened fire, the void lit with blinding plasma beams. Human shields flared, ships shook, but none broke. Then the humans answered. Missiles streaked out in dense waves. Railgun slugs ripped through Korvac armor, and drones swarmed into enemy formations like angry wasps. The sky above Silurian became a storm of fire. The Therial, watching from the surface, gasped in awe as the humans held the line. The Therial joined the fight at first. The Therial fleet remained behind the humans, nervous and uncertain. Their ships were lighter, weaker, not designed for heavy combat. But when Admiral Hale gave the signal, they surged forward. "Strike their flanks," she commanded. "Use your speed. Harass them. Make them break formation." The Therial captains obeyed. Their sleek ships darted through the chaos, weaving between blasts, hitting enemy engines and slipping away before counterfire could land. The Korvac snarled in fury. For so long, the Therial had been prey. Now they fought with daring and precision, and their strikes tore holes in the enemy's massive formation. On the bridge of a Therial ship, Captain Cyril gritted his teeth as his vessel dove through enemy fire. "We are not running anymore," he shouted to his crew. "Today we fight for our world." Cheers filled the ship as they fired another volley into the heart of a Korvac cruiser. Human unpredictability. The battle raged, but Admiral Hale never lost her calm. She watched the patterns of enemy movement, predicting their attempts to encircle her fleet. "They're trying to box us in," her tactical officer warned. "Good," Hale said. "That means they're overconfident. Activate Maneuver Sigma." Her ship suddenly shifted, breaking formation in a way no Korvac commander expected. Instead of being trapped, the humans split the enemy line in two, hammering each half separately. The Korvac had never seen anything like it. To them, battles were rigid contests of strength, formation against formation. But humanity fought like storms, changing direction without warning, breaking rules the enemy didn't even realize could be broken. "Impossible," snarled Warlord Dresh on his flagship as he watched his fleets fall apart. "They should be crushed. They should—" His voice broke as another wave of human missiles slammed into his rear guard, scattering his forces even further. The turning point for hours, the battle raged. The skies over Silurian burned with light. Ships exploded, debris scattered across the void, and still the fight continued. But slowly the tide began to turn. The Korvac were losing their discipline. Their ships broke formation, chasing human drones and ethereal raiders. They could not predict where the next strike would come. Admiral Hale saw her moment. "All ships," she commanded, "focus fire on their command vessels. Cut off the head and the body will fall." Railguns roared, missiles screamed, and beams of energy tore through the darkness. One by one, Korvac flagships exploded, their command crews lost. Confusion rippled through the enemy ranks. On the ground, the ethereal people erupted into cheers. The predators who had hunted them for so long were finally faltering. The surface battle, while the fleets clashed above. Korvac landing craft slipped through, striking at Silurian's surface. But this time, the Therial were ready. Human marines and Therial soldiers stood side by side as the raiders stormed the cities. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, buildings shook, but the defenders held firm. Sergeant Cole led a squad through the burning streets, his voice steady even under fire. "Hold the line! Don't let them through!" Beside him, Therial fighters fired their rifles with newfound confidence. They were no longer helpless civilians. They had become soldiers, and their world would not fall without resistance. When the dust cleared, the raiders were driven back into the skies, their landing craft destroyed. Silurian still stood. The retreat of the Korvac at last, Warlord Dresh saw the truth. His fleet was breaking, his ground forces failing. The humans had outmaneuvered him at every turn, and the Therial had risen stronger than ever. "We retreat," he growled bitterly. "But this is not the end. The humans will pay. The Therial will pay. One day we will return." His ships turned and fled into deep space, leaving behind wreckage and burning pride. The once unstoppable Korvac armada had been broken. The celebration on Silurian, the night sky glowed with light from burning debris. But it was not the light of despair. It was the light of victory. Crowds filled the streets, cheering, embracing, weeping with joy. For the first time, their world was safe. For the first time, the Korvac had been defeated. In the council chamber, Chancellor Terran addressed his people. His voice carried across the capital, firm and proud. "Today we stood with humanity. Today we fought not as prey but as allies. And together we have turned the tide. The Korvac are not invincible. With courage, with unity, we can stand against them." The crowd roared in response, their hope stronger than ever. Humanity's message on the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, Admiral Hale watched the celebrations. A faint smile touched her face. She knew the war was not over. The Korvac would return one day, stronger, hungrier, but for now a great victory had been won. She transmitted a final message to the Therial Council. "We came because you asked for help. We fought because you deserved a chance to live free. But remember this, humanity does not fight for gratitude. We fight for principle. One day we may send out our own SOS, and we will hope someone answers." Chancellor Terran bowed his head with respect. "And we will answer," he promised. A new dawn, the galaxy took notice. Word of the battle spread quickly, of the Deathworlders who had not ignored a plea for help, who had not sent token aid, but an entire fleet. Of the Therial who had risen from prey to warriors beside them. Some empires whispered in fear, wondering what it would mean if humanity ever turned its fury toward them. Others whispered in awe, realizing that the humans were not conquerors but guardians. For the Therial it was simple. The SOS had not been ignored. The Deathworlders had come, and with them the tide of the war had changed forever. The stars over Silurian burned bright. though not with the fires of war. Smoke still rose from the shattered remnants of the Korvac fleet, but it mingled with the soft glow of hope, and the streets of Silurian thrummed with life once again. The Therial people were alive, their homes mostly intact, and for the first time in months they believed in the future. Admiral Rebecca Hale stood on the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, watching the last Korvac ships retreat into deep space. Her fleet had suffered losses, but the victories had been decisive. Humanity had answered the Therial SOS not with hesitation, but with overwhelming force. And now, the survivors of both species were ready to rebuild. The aftermath of battle in orbit, human and Therial engineers worked side by side, repairing damaged ships and orbital stations. The Therial fleet had grown stronger under human guidance. New tactics had been taught, new formations learned, and lessons about endurance and adaptability had been absorbed. The Therial pilots were no longer novices. They were fighters who had seen the fury of the Korvac and survived. On the planet below, civilians emerged from shelters, blinking in the daylight. Markets slowly reopened and children played in the streets where once there had been only fear. The human Marines helped the Therial rebuild homes, reinforcing walls and clearing debris. Their presence was not only protective, but also symbolic. Humanity had come, and the galaxy would not forget. The Therial's gratitude Chancellor Terran stood before a council assembled in the capital city. His silver eyes scanned the gathered leaders, human and Therial alike. "We owe a debt beyond words," Terran said. "Our fleets were shattered, our cities burning, and yet the humans came. They risked everything for us, not for gain, not for tribute, but simply because we called for help." Counselor Vera added, her voice soft but firm. "We have seen what it means to fight beside Deathworlders. We have seen their courage, their ferocity, and their compassion. The galaxy will know of this day. Humanity has not only saved us, they have changed who we are." Even among the Therial, hardened by despair and war, tears flowed. Their people had once begged for hope, and now, hope had arrived in a fleet of steel and fire. The humans teach more than war, while the Therial worked to repair their world and fleet. Humanity did not leave them to recover alone. Admiral Hale called her officers and Therial leaders for a series of strategic briefings. They discussed defense, resource allocation, and long-term planning. The humans taught the Therial how to anticipate enemy maneuvers, how to coordinate multiple fleets simultaneously, and how to use unpredictability as a weapon. On the surface, human engineers helped the Therial design better infrastructure for their cities. Combining human engineering with Therial technology, planetary shields were reinforced, orbital weapons improved, and emergency evacuation systems were installed. The Therial began to see that survival was more than winning battles. It was preparation, resilience, and the courage to act. The Korvac retreat. The Korvac had fled far beyond Therial space, but their losses were devastating. Many of their warships were destroyed, their war leaders humiliated, and their plans to enslave the Therial shattered. Warlord Dresh, his pride in ruins, gathered what remained of his forces. Rage burned in his black-scaled chest. "They will pay for this," he growled. "The Therial, the humans. They will bleed. One day we will return and crush them." But even Dresh could not deny what had happened. The humans had fought with intelligence and adaptability that his warriors could not match. For the first time, the Korvac had tasted defeat at the hands of a species they considered a minor nuisance. Across the galaxy, the story of the battle spread quickly. Whispers traveled to every empire and colony. Humans sent an entire fleet for strangers, one diplomat murmured. "They fought an empire and won," another added. "They are Deathworlders," a captain said quietly, "and we should fear them." Humanity's reputation grew, not as conquerors but as defenders, fierce and unwavering in their sense of justice. A lesson in compassion on Silurian. Chancellor Terran walked through the streets with Admiral Hale. The Therial people came forward, bowing in respect, offering gratitude beyond words, yet Hale's expression remained calm. "We do not fight for thanks," she said quietly. "We fight because someone asked for help." "That is enough." Terran nodded, understanding the depth of her words. Humanity had not sought reward, not sought glory. They had come because a people were in danger, and because answering a call for help was the right thing to do. Children followed them through the streets, eyes wide with admiration. For the Therial, this day was the beginning of a new era. They had been saved, yes, but they had also learned courage, resilience, and the value of standing together. Strengthening the alliance, Admiral Hale convened a final meeting with Therial leaders and her officers. The galaxy was not quiet, and the Korvac would return. Preparation was essential. "We have bought time," Hale said. "The Korvac will not forget. They will rebuild, but we are not powerless. Together we can protect this system. Together, we can make sure they never conquer another world as long as we stand." Terran responded with firm resolve. "The Therial Confederacy will fight beside you. We have learned your ways, and we have found strength we never knew existed. The galaxy will see that we are no longer prey." The human officers nodded. Their partnership was solid. For the first time, they were not simply helping a distant species. They had forged allies who would stand beside them when the next storm came. The galaxy remembers news of the battle. Humanity's heroism and the Therial's transformation traveled across space at the speed of subspace transmissions. Empires whispered in fear and awe. "They sent a fleet for strangers," one ambassador said. "They defeated a war clan of the Korvac," another replied. "They are Deathworlders," a soldier said, "and we must hope we never face them unprepared." The reputation of humans spread far and wide. They were no longer simply a new species in the galaxy. They were guardians, protectors, fierce in battle yet compassionate in purpose. And the Therial, once a people on the brink of extinction, now stood tall, their confidence renewed. A day of celebration on the surface of Silurian, the people celebrated. Markets were open, children played in the streets, and musicians filled the air with songs of victory. Fires were lit in honor of the humans who had fought for them, and memorials were made for the brave Therial and human soldiers who had fallen in battle. Sergeant Cole and other human Marines mingled with civilians, offering smiles, guidance, and encouragement. It was a rare moment of peace, one earned through courage and sacrifice. Terran addressed the people one final time. "Today we celebrate life. We celebrate survival, but we also remember the lesson we have learned. When the galaxy turns away, we must never lose hope. Courage and unity can overcome even the darkest forces." The final message before departing Silurian, Admiral Hale transmitted a final message across the Therial Confederacy and the galaxy. "We came because we heard a call for help. We fought because it was right. Remember this: one day any species may need aid. When that day comes, answer the call. The galaxy is safer when no one fights alone." The message echoed through the systems, a reminder of what humanity represented: strength tempered with compassion, ferocity balanced by justice. The future begins as the humans departed Silurian, their fleet leaving the system in tight formation. The Therial watched with awe and gratitude. They had survived the impossible. They had learned how to fight, and they had discovered something even more valuable: allies who would stand beside them no matter the odds. The Korvac, though still dangerous, had been checked. The tide of war had turned. The galaxy had learned a new truth: when the humans hear a cry for help, they do not ignore it. And when they come, they bring hope, fury, and the unshakable will to protect. On Silurian, the sun rose over the rebuilt cities, glinting off the new defenses, the repaired ships, and the faces of people ready to face the future. It was a new dawn in every sense, a dawn of hope, courage, and unity. And in the cold reaches of space, somewhere far away, the Korvac licked their wounds, knowing the galaxy had changed forever. For the Therial, for humanity, and for all who might call for help. One truth had been proven: the SOS was never ignored. The Deathworlders had answered,